Welcome to my Learn to Knit a Scarf series. My name is Erin Gates. I am the designer behind Lizzie Knits and owner of Three Birds Yarn Studio. And for this series of videos, I am going to show you how to make a scarf completely from scratch. My aim with this video is to walk you through the very basics, as if you've never picked up a knitting needle before. Like, this is for you. I'm going to cover everything you need to know start to finish. We've got a basic knit stitch we're going to learn. I will show you how to cast on a scarf. I'll show you how to bind off at the end. I will show you how to add little fringe to complete it. And in this first video, this is introduction / materials. I'm also going to show you in a minute kind of an overview of materials, like what kind of yarn you're going to need to buy, and then what kind of needle size we want to work with, and also just kind of give you a quick walkthrough of types of yarn and types of knitting needles. So when you go to your craft store and you're trying to buy supplies for the very first time, you won't feel overwhelmed. So hopefully I can give you a little intro into that so things just become a little bit clearer, because I think, you know, when you're starting out as a beginner, you kind of don't know where to start. So I'll show you a few things. But here is the scarf that we're going to make. And yours might not be this mustard color. You can pick any color you'd like. But the texture is going to look like this. This is a basic knit stitch. It's called garter stitch. So I will walk you through how to make this knit stitch, how to switch sides, how to add separate balls of yarn when you run out of one and you need to add then the second skein. We will cover everything, and in the end you'll end up with a chunky squishy scarf that looks just like this. Okay, let me change the camera view right now and show you some of the supplies and give you a little overview. Okay, hold on. Okay, let's talk materials for this scarf. You're going to need 3 skeins of yarn, and I'm going to tell you more about this yarn in a minute. So 3 skeins, a set of straight knitting needles. Okay, you're going to need a tape measure and a pair of scissors, any type of scissors. Mine are for cutting yarn, but any scissors will do. And you're going to need a tapestry needle. Let's go over the materials individually for a minute. Maybe not so much. The tape measure is pretty straightforward, just like the scissors. Those are fine. The tape measure, you can even use a yardstick, just something to measure, because we're going to knit until our scarf is 70 inches. So you just want to make sure you can tell where to stop knitting. All right, so tape measure, scissors, and for here, a tapestry needle too, and you can find these in the aisle right next to the knitting needles at your craft store. So these are a little different. If you're not familiar with a tapestry needle, they're a little different than like a regular sewing needle because they're much larger. The thing with these, they just need to be big enough because you're going to be threading yarn through here. So these ends are kind of big. This will work. And these can either be metal or plastic. So they're all available at your, you just want, or if you're shopping online, you can just search tapestry needle because they're oversized and big enough for working with yarn. I keep mine in a nice little case, but oops. Okay, seal those up. Let's talk needles. Okay, so needles come in all different sizes. So the ones that we're using are kind of on the bigger side because we're using big chunky yarn. You wouldn't want to use skinny needles with this because it would be really hard to knit with. The stitches would be super tight and it would probably hurt your hands too. So with knitting, you always want to use the appropriate size needle for the type of yarn you're using. So we're kind of with chunky yarn, bigger needles. For example, if I was knitting with teeny tiny skinny yarn, and this is a leftover from a sock project that I had. So see how much thinner this yarn is than our scarf yarn. You wouldn't want to use these big chunky needles for this because the stitches would be like super loose and loopy and probably snag, and it wouldn't really hold its shape. So for these, you would want to use like super skinny needles, like this size for small yarn. So it all just depends on the type of yarn you're using and what is the recommended size. So I'm really showing you, yarn comes in like 7 different categories. This is considered a 6, and actually you can see it right on the label. This would be considered a 1, and this is, they call 1 sock weight, 2, and then it like gradually gets thicker as you go. And then even though this is 6, there is one more category, a 7 beyond this, that's considered, it's called jumbo, and that is like super thick yarn, and it's mostly used for making really chunky like throw blankets and stuff. I don't work with it very often for garments, or it would just be too big. So 1, and then there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and here, like I have a couple other examples here. Just if you're checking out yarn labels, like this would be a 5 bulky, so this is 1 step lighter than this. I have another one here that's a 4, and you can tell by these little, oh, it's blurry or not, these on your yarn label, there's these tiny little like yarn skein graphics with a number inside, and it's super helpful for quickly identifying what category of yarn you have. But occasionally, and this depends on the yarn company and the manufacturer, sometimes they don't have this like the actual like graphic, but it will be written out. So you just might have to search a little harder, but it is really handy when they just have these little pictures, because that's what when I'm yarn shopping, like that's what my mind goes to right away, just as a reference. So here you can kind of see how the spectrum here, like this is a 4, it's starting to get a lot thinner, and then I don't have a 2 or 3 for an example, but then it goes down to 1. All right, let me put those away and show you a little bit more about our yarn label as our example. So I kind of want to go over what is on a yarn label. It basically, because just so it looks like there's a lot of information, but let's break it down a little bit. I told you just about the category. Every yarn label is going to tell you what kind of yarn it is, what size. I mean, if you want to know what kind of yarn, then that is the composition: 80% acrylic, 20% wool. And some of these other, and it might be written in different spots. So this one, 100% wool. So every yarn label is set up a little differently, just depending on the company. But all the information is going to be there. Next, you want to look for, and this is another important one on the yarn label. When I was talking about finding the correct size needles, your yarn label is going to tell you. So, or if you're a crocheter, and I love Lion Brand because they have these quick reference pictures, so it helps you just like find the information really quickly. So here is recommended like crochet hook size, and here's a little picture of knitting needles. And they're telling me that our recommended size for this yarn is size 13 or 9 millimeter. So that's what we got. This is what we're working with here. And mine's stamped. And your needles will always have the size, and it'll come in a package too. It'll have it be on the package, but they'll always be stamped with what size it is. So here, 9 millimeter or US 13. So when you are talking knitting needles, they're going to give you 2 numbers. One is the US sizing system, US 13. So and in the US here, I would just say size 13 needles. But in different parts of the world, they'll give you the metric measurement also, like 9 millimeters. So and if you start reading knitting patterns, it'll give you both measurements. Your yarn label will give you both both ways of identifying the size. So I'm saying US 13, but this is what you want to look for. And even though they didn't write the little US in front of 13, that's what they mean in 9 millimeters. So when you are shopping for your knitting needles, that is the size you need. And again, I'm going to make a list of this in the description on this video, so you can see it a little clearer if I'm jumping around too much. All right, so that's the needles. You need one set of straight needles. Another thing about the needles, last thing, make sure you're only getting straight needles. We're knitting a straight scarf. There are many types of knitting needles. There's other types. Some are circular needles with a cord that attaches the two. See, these are fixed circular needles. You don't want these, okay? Don't buy these. We are knitting with straight needles. This is for knitting round things like a hat, because then you just keep round and round and round. Don't get worried. Don't worry about these. And also don't worry about needle sets that look like this. These are called double pointy needles, DPNs. These are for knitting small circumference things. Still, again, in a circle. So this would be like finishing up the top of the hat, or these are great for knitting socks. So again, these do not apply to our project. We want basic straight needles. All right, US 13, 9 millimeter straight needles. Last thing about the yarn, and then we'll go on to our next video. And again, you want 3 skeins of these, but I want to show you that every skein of yarn from every company is going to tell you what the yardage is, because you're going to need to know how much is in here. So this is saying it's 106 yards or 97 meters. Again, they do both metric and US and standard. It also tells you how much weight is in here. And this can be helpful for working patterns too, but we don't need to worry about the weight. We're just going to say that this comes with 106 yards, and I know that you will need 3 of these. I want to, when you're buying thick and quick, I have to show you, just point one thing out to you. So this I love this yarn. I think it's amazing. And the best thing is it's very easy to find in stores and online. So it should be very accessible. If you Google it, and you'll find like a ton of retailers, or I think even Amazon has it too, which is super helpful. And obviously we all love the free shipping and free super quick shipping. Okay. This yarn comes in kind of 2 styles. We have solid color, which I also used a solid for this, for my scarf that I've already completed, but my next scarf is going to be in this terracotta color. Or they have multicolor variegated. And the variegated tones that they have, that they've like mixed up, and they're so fun. Like, I love this one so much. But they come with different yardage. So see, the variegated 87 yards versus the 106 yards per skein is kind of a big difference. So I just want to let you know, if you find a variegated, and check your label, if you find a skein that only has 87 yards per skein, you will need to buy 4 of these. If it's the ones that have the 106 per skein, you will only need 3. So just please keep that in mind when you're yarn shopping. Or if you buy this and you end up only getting 3, you can just make your scarf a little shorter. Like, it really not a big problem. So I just wanted to point that out, because that will make a difference when you're knitting. Okay, I think I covered it all. I will list these materials so you'll know. You can screenshot it or write it down, what needles to buy and how much of this to buy. You'll need the tapestry needle, scissors, and a tape measure. Okay, I think we're ready to get knitting. Okay, follow to video 2, and we're going to cast on this project. All right.